Hello everyone, welcome to today's lesson. I'm Mr. Kevin Jagi from the School of Computing and Informatics. I'll be taking you through computer support and maintenance. And by the end of this lesson, you are going to understand what is computer maintenance, why do we carry out maintenance to computers, what are the different types of maintenance that can be performed on the computers and the associated devices, what are the key system documents that we refer to when you're carrying out maintenance and their purpose. And again, you are going to understand which tools do we use to carry out maintenance and the function of each and every tool. And again, we'll also look at some of the key components of the computer that you'd refer to as the first point of reference when you're carrying out the support and maintenance. So our first unit or topic is on introduction to computer support and maintenance, and it goes straight to understand first what is support and what is maintenance. When you talk about support, is the aspect of providing guidance or help, especially when the computer is working. When you buy a computer, it is working perfectly. With time, it may fail, which may require some repair, some replacement. And when you talk of support, it may come in especially to the users or a community of users who may need your help as an expert in the area of support and maintenance. Maybe a certain component may need to be connected well, to be configured well. A certain software may require to be installed, and that aspect is what we refer to as support, the process of providing diagnostic, troubleshooting, and maintenance services to a computer or similar devices that are associated with computers, things like printers, scanners, and so on. Maintenance comes in as a form of, or as a process of troubleshooting and resolving problems and issues within a faulty computer or the associated devices. Troubleshooting is the process of identifying a problem and resolving that problem. It could be a hardware problem. Let's say the processor is faulty, the hard disk is not functioning, the motherboard is faulty, the printer has a problem. The process of identifying and resolving those issues, which may come in form of a repair or replacement, is referred to as maintenance. And maintaining computer is a continuous process because it gives life to the computer, or it helps the user to be able to use the computer over a period of time without issues coming up in later. So what does maintenance and support involve? Maintenance and support is a key area within the computers and the computers in a network, and it revolves around three main areas. It revolves around the hardware components of the computer. It revolves around the computers in a network, that is the community of computers in a network, and also it revolves around the softwares. So it may involve installing the hardware components, replacing hardware components, repairing hardware components. It may also involve connecting computers to the network, repairing networks, configuring networks, and replacing network components and the cables that are faulty. It may also involve softwares installation, repairing softwares, and updating softwares, and so on. So all aspects that revolves around the hardware, the computers in the network, and also the softwares is what support and maintenance involves. So somebody who is in ICT, who is carrying out support and maintenance, may come in to help other community of users in terms of support, and it may also come in form of maintenance, direct repair of a component that is not working properly, which may be a single component within the computer system, or with computers that are in the network, or again may come in form of softwares, installing and repairing softwares that are within, again, the entire setup of single computer or computers in a network. What are the reasons why we perform support and maintenance? When you carry out support and maintenance, then you prevent unexpected downtime of the computer. Thereby, you rectify problems before they occur. Support and maintenance, in this case, when you say maintenance, an example in this case may involve like when you install and update an antivirus software, you prevent that computer from maybe losing data or data being affected in case that computer is infected with computer viruses. And therefore, that way you prevent unexpected problems before they occur. So we also carry out maintenance and support to prolong the life of computer systems. You are able to use them over a period of time without problems. It results into increase on computer speed. Sometimes the speed of the computer can be affected over issues that may be solved by use of support and maintenance. Like when it comes to disk cleaning up maybe data that is not in use or that is not relevant in a particular computer, you create more space. That computer is likely to result into increase in speed because again, if the disks are full, and again, if you have not upgraded your computer to a much better speed, then the computer may be quite slow. And by performing that support and maintenance in that direction, again, it's going to increase the speed. You are able to prevent errors that are likely to occur, either both to documents or to files, and also to softwares that are installed in the computer. It secures your data once you carry out maintenance and support, because again, you have said it may come up in form of backup of data. In case the initial copy is lost, then you can also refer to the backup copy. That way it secures your data and information, and again you can apply more security measures to secure data in form of support and maintenance, and again it saves time. So all these aspects of support and maintenance, they are done to ensure that the computer works effectively without issues. There are two types of support and maintenance. We have active maintenance and we also have passive maintenance. When you talk of active maintenance, these are the aspect of repairs that may come in to solve a problem that might have occurred on a hardware component or software or in a group of computers that are in a network. It takes place in form of repairs, active participation in terms of carrying out maintenance. But passive maintenance, these are precautionary steps that you take to ensure that issues do not come up with your computer later. The precautionary step, an example, is like the one I've given out, like the use of installation of antivirus software, carrying out preventive maintenance, cleaning up the keyboard, the mouse, and the computer from dust, such that the dust may not affect the components of the computer later in future. Those precautionary steps are classified as passive maintenance, but the actual repair are classified as the active maintenance. Then these repairs, both active and passive, are carried out in reference to a document, and this document is referred to as the system documentation. At times, the user may not be a complete or a competent person in a specific area when it comes to support and maintenance, but they can refer to a special document which is referred to as system documentation and perform a particular task. For instance, when you acquire a software, an operating system, or any kind of a software, it always come up with a user guide or the user manual. When you acquire a component, a mouse, the keyboard, the printer, the computer, it always comes up with a user guide or a manual to guide the user on how that component works and how to install it, how to solve a problem in case it emanates, and so on. Or the same information, you can find it from the manufacturer's website in form of a guide, placed somewhere as a help within the help section, and so on. This is what we refer to as system documentation. It's a collection of documents that requires or that describes the requirement, the capabilities, the limitations, the design, the operation, and the maintenance of a system or a component. Actually, it is a user guide, information that describes the product to its users. And in simple terms, we refer to it as a user guide. It's a very key component in the repair and maintenance, or maintenance and support, because it serves as a point of reference to any person who is carrying out support and maintenance. So the importance of this particular document is that it teaches a user how to install and maintain an application, and therefore each and every time when you are performing this task, installation and maintenance, you can always refer to the system documentation. It provides a representation on how the system works, and therefore any other time when a person is carrying out support and maintenance or trying to make modification to a system or a software application, he can always be able to understand how it works and how the initial designer had put the instructions together to come up with that component, such that he can be able to improve it or make some modification. It also provides idea for other people to refer to, especially when you want to make changes or make modification to a particular component or group of components within the computer system. There are different types of system documentation. There are those that are based on a single component. These are referred to as component and peripheral documentation. When you buy a mouse, like the previous example, you get it together with a user guide. That's a component, and it comes with a component documentation that tells you how to connect that mouse to the system unit and how it works, and in case there is a problem, how to solve it. The keyboard, again, it comes with a documentation. It's also another component. When you buy a printer, it comes with a documentation. These are referred to as component and peripheral documentation. All the peripheral components, the screen, the mouse, the keyboard, the printer, the scanner, they contain a documentation where the person performing support and maintenance can always refer to. Then we have chip and chipset documentation, or the microchips within the computer. They're also accompanied by a user guide or a documentation where you can refer to each and every time you're carrying out maintenance and support. Microchip, like a processor, the motherboard is a microchip, or the graphic card, the network card, all those microchips come with a documentation. It's referred to as chip or chipset documentation. We also have manufacturer-specific documentation. These ones comes up with the systems that come as a complete system from branded manufacturers. Let's say the IBM or International Business Machine, Compaq, Dell, HP. Those are branded manufacturers that produce a complete set of components. A computer from a company like Dell would produce a manufacturer-specific documentation covering the entire system, the entire computer from Dell or HP, which is a manufacturer-specific documentation. And it contains all the aspects of that system, unlike the individual chipset or individual component. The motherboard is not separate. The mouse, the keyboard, and other components, they are not separate. They are integrated together from the branded manufacturer, and therefore it produces one complete document. Then we also have warranties and service contract. They also serve as a document because it's also a guide to that particular component. It is an agreement between the seller and the buyer, or the manufacturer and the buyer, that in case the component develop some problems within the period of the warrant, the component can be replaced or it can be repaired at either the seller's cost or at a particular cost. So these can also be referred to as a system document. All these are point of reference in case a problem occurs with the component or in case support is required. There are quite a number of tools that can be used to carry out support and maintenance. Each of these tools has a specific function. We use them for a specific task, and we use them for the appropriate area where it is needed, just like any other person who is within the repair and maintenance section. He has a toolbox. The same way a computer technician requires a toolbox that contains tools and equipment that can be used to carry out support and maintenance during the period of this particular task. And therefore, we have components like the screwdrivers, we have the tweezers, the diagnostic softwares, multimeters, and so on. We use the screwdrivers to tighten or loosen screws. Each major components of the computer, they are held tightly within the computer motherboard and the system unit through the screws. So we use the screwdriver for that particular purpose. We have the tweezers. These ones are used to pick small parts that may drop in inaccessible parts of the computer, like within the system case. Instead of forcing your hand to get to that component, this is a screw that has fallen there. You use the tweezer, you pick it without damaging other component. We have the diagnostic softwares. These are working softwares that you can use to troubleshoot other softwares. It's an important aspect within the toolbox because you are able to know why this other software is not working. You are able to troubleshoot softwares within the system unit. We also have the multimeter. This one is for testing voltage, testing the amount of voltage that is getting into the computer or that is getting to the connectors, to different connectors and different parts of the connectors within the system unit. So it is used to test connectivity through power, which is a very important component because you are able to measure the exact voltage and know why a particular component is either not working properly or why it is experiencing some problems. We have the chip extractor. This is for chip removal. All the microchips are removed using the chip extractor. Like if it's a processor, instead of using something like the screwdriver where you end up damaging other components when you are removing it or lifting it up, you use a chip extractor. Then we also have wire cutters and wire strippers. In case you want to cut wires like the network cables, we use the wire cutters. If it is the power cables or any kind of wire, you use the wire cutters. Instead, in case you want to clean the computer without using liquids, we use a blower or compressed air, which is used to blow away dust from the computer. So all these are referred to as the tools that are used to carry out maintenance and support. There are quite a number of them. They are not limited to those few, and each of those components has a specific task. So we look at each and every component now within the system unit, starting with the first power component, which is the power supply unit. See how that particular component is designed, how it works, in case of problems, how do you troubleshoot it and fix a problem within this particular component. So a computer receives power through the power supply unit. It's one of the most important components at the back of the computer where the power cable gets into through this particular port here is where the computer receives power from the main source, from the socket. And once it gets to this power supply unit, this power is distributed through the power connectors that either gets to the motherboard all it gets to the disk drives, the disk and the disk drives alongside, depending on the different components that you have. You may have more than one hard disk, you may have a floppy disk, you may have a CD drive, and so on. So the power distribution gets out of the power supply unit to different components. So it supplies power to the various components of the computer. So how does this power supply unit work? When the power supply receives a voltage which is in high amount, that is 240 volts, it is the power supply unit lowers this voltage or steps down this voltage into amount that the components requires. Most of the components within the system unit that gets power from these connectors receives a combination of 12 volts and 5 volts. And therefore, it is the work of this power supply unit to manage that voltage such that it produces the exact amount of voltage that is required by the components. 240 volts is quite high, and therefore, once it gets into the entire amount gets into the different components, like the hard disk, the motherboard, the processor, this is likely to damage the component. That's why it's lowered down to an amount that is reasonable. So it lowers down the voltage to an amount that the components require. So the working principle of a power supply unit looks in this structural format, where the power is received by the transformer, then it passes through the rectifier to the regulator, and then to the different components. So let me have a clear representation of that diagram here on this chart. So the power gets through into the power supply unit, and it is received by the transformer. Then it gets through to the rectifier. Then lastly, it gets through to the regulator. So in that order. And then we have the output voltage in that order. So when the power supply unit gets a power from the main socket, this voltage may be between 110 volts AC and 240 volts AC, alternating current. It gets through to the entire power supply unit system, which may be between 110 volts and 240 volts. The variation here is because different countries have different voltage output. If you measure the voltage output from the main socket, especially within our country here, the voltage output is usually 240 volts. But when you get to other countries, there is variation. It may be 230, it may be 200, or less than that. But the power supply is designed to take any amount between 110 volts AC and 240 volts AC. Once it gets to the power supply unit of a computer, it emits the first component, which is the transformer. And the work of the transformer is to step down this voltage from 240 volts or any amount between 110 and 240 into a smaller amount that the components of the computer can be able to take. And this is a step-down transformer. So this is a step-down transformer that is going to step this voltage from 240 volts to 5 volts AC and 12 volts AC. All of them, again, the alternating current from 240 to 5 and 12 volts AC. And when this voltage gets into the rectifier, the work of the rectifier is now to convert the AC into DC, from alternating current into direct current. So 5 volts AC meets the rectifier, then it is converted into 5 volts DC, direct current. This one is converted into 12 volts DC. So the rectifier converts alternating current into direct current. And then the regulator here separates the positive voltage and negative voltage. So the 5 volts DC is separated into positive 5 volts DC and negative 5 volts DC. And then 12 volts DC is separated into positive 12 volts DC and negative 12 volts DC. This is the output that gets to the connectors or the various components of the computer. Like in our previous diagram here, this particular power supply unit, as you can see, from the output here, this is where you connect to the hard disk, to the motherboard, to the floppy disk, to the compact disk or the CD drive. The output that gets to the different components is the voltage output from the connectors. And this is what you get from this component here, positive 5 volts, negative 5 volts, and so on. The combination of these voltage. So when the power gets to the power supply unit, it is stepped down from 240 volts by the transformer into 5 and 12 volts. And then it gets to the rectifier, which converts the AC to DC voltage, and then later it gets the regulator, which separates the positive voltage and the negative voltage that is connected to the different connectors. That is how the power supply unit works. So the working principle of a power supply unit is based on that structure there, converting 240 volts into 5 and 12 volts DC. So each of these components of the power supply unit has a specific function, as we have just mentioned. The transformer steps down, the rectifier converts AC to DC, because the components of the computer uses direct current. They do not use alternating current, and therefore it is the work of the rectifier to do that. Then the smoother is to make sure that the voltage is stable, does not vary from 3 to 5 or to 4. It is stable, it is 5 throughout, and it does not fluctuate either to the lower side or to the higher side. Then the regulator separates the positive and the negative. This particular power supply may develop some problem, and this, when the computer has a problem with the power supply unit, it could be as a result of different issues, and therefore you need to narrow down and be able to identify or know that it is the power supply and not the other component. And what signs do you look for? There might be strange noise coming from the back side of the computer where we have the power supply unit. So in case you hear some sound, either the fans they are producing some sound as they turn, then it is important to check to ensure that the power supply unit is working well. And again, in case you connect the computer and nothing happens, this could be a sign that power is not getting through to the power supply unit, or maybe the power supply unit is not producing different power voltages to different components. Therefore, you need to test this with the use of a multimeter to check that power is getting through to the computer. Then ensure that, sometimes again, the computer may turn on a few seconds and then turn off again, or it may keep on restarting each and every time. It could be an issue that there is a problem in the power supply unit. Therefore, it is important you test the voltage by use of a multimeter. The troubleshooting aspect is based on a multimeter where you connect the multimeter to the power connector output, that is these connectors, and ensure the right voltage is coming out. And again, you check the connector from the main socket to ensure that power is getting through the power supply unit, and it's not the issue of failure of the power, and therefore you are able to narrow down and know that there is a problem with the power supply unit, and in such a case then you may either replace the power supply unit, or if you have good knowledge on electricity and magnetism, you can go ahead and open the power supply unit and try to check what could be the problem. but it is not advisable to open the power supply case when the voltage is on, because as you can see from this particular diagram, very high voltage is getting into the power supply unit, which may cause an accident or might cause death as a result of this voltage getting into your body or flowing into your body. It's quite high voltage that can result to serious injuries, and therefore it is important to ensure that you have a good ground in electricity when you are especially working with the inside of a power supply unit. So that brings us to the end of our today's lesson. Once we meet in our next class, we look at another component, the motherboard, and try to see how it works, the different types of motherboard, and how to troubleshoot the motherboard, and then we'll move on to other components in that order. Thank you so much.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.